They called her the Granny Ripper. She was once an ordinary grandmother, or at least that's what her neighbors thought. But beneath her wrinkled face and gentle smile, there was a darkness so chilling, so incomprehensible, that it would shock the world. Her name is Tamara Samsonova, a name that haunts the streets of St. Petersburg, a name that sent shivers through the Russian justice system. And now, for the rest of her life, she would rot in a psychiatric prison, surrounded by the kind of people she once pretended to be. But the real question is, what is life like for one of Russia's most notorious serial killers behind bars? Can a woman like Tamara ever be contained? Tamara Samsonova was no ordinary criminal. By the time authorities arrested her in 2015, the world learned of a disturbing truth. This elderly woman, who looked no different than a kind-hearted pensioner, had allegedly killed over 14 people over 2 decades. Her methods were brutal, calculated, and terrifyingly personal. She drugged her victims, dismembered their bodies, and disposed of their remains in the quiet corners of St. Petersburg. But the most chilling part? She kept a diary, a journal filled with grotesque confessions, written in Russian, German, and even a cryptic mix of languages, detailing how she murdered her victims with no remorse. One entry read, "I killed my tenant Volodya, cut him into pieces in the bathroom with a knife, put the pieces of his body in plastic bags, and threw them away." Now, the same psychological facility where she had once been admitted as a patient had become her permanent home, a place where monsters like her were locked away. But the real question remains, can an institution like this truly contain a mind as dark as hers? Or does Tamara Samsonova still find ways to manipulate the world around her? Life behind bars. The first days in isolation. When Tamara was first sentenced to a secure psychiatric hospital, the Russian media exploded. People demanded answers. How did she go unnoticed for so long? How did she manage to kill so many people? But for Tamara, prison wasn't punishment. It was just a new place to exist. At first, she seemed unbothered, even amused. She smirked in the courtroom, blowing kisses to reporters. When the judge read her sentence, she simply said, "You decide my fate. I am ready for any outcome." But as the cell door clanged shut for the first time, the reality of her new life set in. No more freedom. No more control over who lived and who died. No more ability to walk among the unsuspecting. And worst of all, no more power. Because here, in this forgotten psychiatric ward, Tamara Samsonova wasn't feared. She was forgotten. Life inside Kazanyak Psychiatric Hospital was nothing like the life Tamara once lived. For the first time in decades, she wasn't in control. Every morning, she was woken up at 6 a.m. sharp, whether she wanted to or not. She was given a thin bowl of porridge, a piece of stale bread, and a cup of weak tea. No knives, no sharp objects, no access to anything she could use as a weapon. Her days were a blur of monotony and surveillance, a medical checkup, a brief walk in an enclosed courtyard, always under watch, mandatory therapy sessions. Back to her cell before nightfall. The once cunning and elusive killer was now nothing more than a patient, subject to rules and regulations she had no say in. The same diary pages that once held her confessions had been taken away. And worst of all, no one feared her anymore. Because in a place like this, everyone was dangerous. Most inmates in Kazanyak weren't like Tamara. Many were schizophrenic, paranoid, delusional, but not cold-blooded killers. Tamara, on the other hand, was fully aware of her crimes. She didn't hallucinate victims. She made them disappear, and that made her different. Some inmates avoided her, sensing her calculated predatory energy. Others feared her, whispering about the Granny Ripper and what she had done. But Tamara, she didn't seem to care. She sat alone. She barely spoke. And when she did, she would hum softly to herself, a tune only she seemed to know. Does she feel regret? Years passed. The Russian media forgot her name. The outside world moved on. And Tamara Samsonova? She simply existed. One day, a prison psychiatrist sat across from her, studying her expression. "Do you feel remorse for what you've done?" he asked. Tamara tilted her head as if the question confused her. And then she laughed, a chilling, hollow laugh. Remorse? Why would I? Her voice was flat, void of emotion. I was just doing what I needed to do. There it was, the final confirmation. Tamara Samsonova wasn't insane. She wasn't delusional. She was simply evil. And the scariest part? She still didn't think she had done anything wrong. Tamara Samsonova will never leave Kazanyak Psychiatric Hospital. She will never walk the streets of St. Petersburg again. She will never write another diary entry, describing her victims like footnotes in a novel only she understood. Instead, she will live out her days in a tiny windowless cell, surrounded by people who will never truly understand her. And maybe in a way, that's the only real punishment she could ever receive. Because for someone like Tamara, true suffering isn't being locked away. It's being forgotten. And now she is. What do you think? Do you believe a person like Tamara Samsonova can ever feel remorse? Was she truly insane or just pure evil? What does justice even mean for someone like her? Let's talk in the comments, because some stories don't have happy endings. Some stories are just unforgettable.